Thank you.
Okay, Susan.
So we'll begin the program tonight with presentations by Helen Jacard and Gerry Condon about the Golden Rule. It is a pleasure to have both of you with us and to talk about one of the most important projects that Veterans for Peace has, and certainly the most visible project that we have and successful, that goes around all over this country and sailed to Cuba last year. And I'm sure they'll be talking about the adventures of the Great Loop, which was really spectacular. Helen, you were going to start to talk about the Golden Rule, right?
Yes. Hi. Actually, it's been a while since we got back from the Great Loop, and we saw a lot of you there. It was an amazing adventure, where we visited over 100 cities and gave about 350 presentations. We sailed over 1,000 miles, and it was a 13-month adventure, longer for those of us that were involved in planning and then getting the Golden Rule back north to its home port of Humboldt Bay. But I thought that instead of talking about the Great Loop, I would fill you in on what we did this year.
Sure.
So I put together a little slideshow so you could see what we've been up to this year. I'm going to share my screen. This is one of my favorite pictures. This was taken on Hood Canal, right close to the Bangor
No picture
nuclear
showing.
arms. What?
There's no picture showing.
Really?
Really?
Really, your screen is not shared.
All right. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. There, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Anyway, we were on Hood Canal right outside of the Bangor nuclear armed submarine base, and it was a perfect day for sailing. So I thought I'd show you this lovely picture from that day. Our year started out in Eureka, where the Golden Rule is and was. And this is the 4th of July celebration in Arcata, which is just north of Eureka, both on Humboldt Bay. And this was the first time that I remember that the historic Matticat ferry boat, which is operated by the same man whose boatyard was used for rebuilding the Golden Rule, that little ferry boat went out at the same time that the Golden Rule did. So that was a little fundraiser we had, and then we had a very good presentation by a group called 44 Feet. They're dealing with nuclear power plant fuel rods that are only 44 feet above sea level. And so it's a similar situation to the San Onofre power plant, where they also essentially buried their fuel rods right on the beach. This is our route this year. We covered 13 cities. So we went from, I didn't show the lower part of it, but we went all the way up to Canada 3 times and all the way down to Olympia in Puget Sound, and then all over the Columbia and Willamette River as far up as we had planned to go. So one thing I would mention is that at the top here, you see Steve Buck and Bridge Randall, both members of the Humboldt Yacht Club, and they are the leaders of our new subcommittee that will be making sure that the boat is well maintained. And we have Tamar from Hawaii, Ren Jacob from Oregon, and then in the lower right, you see Shik Cho from South Korea. And Shik Cho got involved because one of her friends wanted the Golden Rule to come to South Korea. We had gone to Hawaii and couldn't make it forward because of COVID. And so Brother Song bought a sailboat, and now they have a peace boat, and she was one of the crew members on their big voyage. So she came over to the United States and sailed with us this year. As usual, we are well loved by the press. I thought I'd show you, especially the Times Standard, which is Eureka's paper. You know, we get headlines that are bigger than if a war had started. So we're always happy about that. Our local people love us. And the first thing that we did was, before the boat even got up to Puget Sound, we participated in the annual protest against nuclear weapons put on by Ground Zero Center for Nonviolent Action. So this was their Hiroshima commemoration. And you can actually see, if you were to look closely, Michelle and I are in that picture. And I think Gerry may have taken one of those pictures. So
And that's
we
right
were
outside the Bangor nuclear submarine base, right?
Yep. Thank you. Also, before the Golden Rule arrived up in Seattle, you can see Michelle in the upper left. She was representing us very well with the Seafair protest. Seafair has a air show, and we were protesting against that, as well as Fleet Week, which is when the U.S. Navy brings its warships into a city. And so we were there for that, along with the kayaktivists that show up every year to protest against Fleet Week. And you might be able to see in the background the Veterans for Peace flags up there. The Golden Rule finally made it to Seattle for a very big welcome, and the Raging Grannies sang, as they did in many places, as they often do for us. And Mike Stern, who wrote the Ballad of the Phoenix and the Golden Rule, which is our theme song, he came too. So I hope to see him later this year. This happened to be a really nice picture from when we were in Olympia. And we had, the big no nuke sign, and nuclear weapons are illegal. And this group of people that greeted us there, they have a weekly vigil up at this intersection here against nuclear weapons. We were honored to be able to interact with Marshallese people again this year. This was in Tacoma, and you can see the three women who were singing and dancing, as were many other people dressed in this theme. But this was the best of the pictures I got. We also had a group of Marshallese youth come and go sailing on the Golden Rule that afternoon, and it was a fantastic experience for all of us. Eventually, we started out going north, and we went to Peace Arch Park, which is a park that's on the border between Canada and the U.S., and had a really wonderful time there, even though it was a little bit cold and a little bit drizzly. But you can see the arch where it says Children of a Common Mother. And this group of people are very involved with not only trying to protect the people of Gaza, but they're also very involved with Maersk, which is shipping weapons to Gaza. And they're also involved in climate change issues, which I'll show a picture of that a little bit later. Our first trip up into Canada was actually up to White Rock. And it's just a little town, but we were very well received there, including a nice article in their paper. You can see Terry Lush on the left, whose father owned the Golden Rule back in the 1970s. And Zoe Bird, who's on the Golden Rule Steering Committee, as well as Tim Tuccaro, who's in the middle, and he was a crew member a day, which was really great. In the upper left corner, when we were visiting in Vancouver, we had a big protest against this pipeline terminal. And so this is an Indigenous woman speaking at the press conference there. It was followed then by a protest with kayaks. So the Golden Rule and these kayaks went out and visited the terminal where they have these massive oil tankers, and they can't even get underneath a bridge to get to this terminal unless it's high tide. So it's really tight, really dangerous, and they'd only be able to clean up like 5 or 10% of the spill if something happened. So it's a disaster waiting to happen in this beautiful waterway. Later, we went up to Victoria, BC, and once again, we were honored with the first prize for the best working boat. And the three of us that were crewing that day got up and received the plaque, and I said, well, we're not a tugboat and we're not a fisher boat, but we work hard for peace. And everybody clapped. It was great. So I got a couple more pictures of Terry. He's not just one of our captains, but he's also an accordion player. He entertained everybody. This year, we were really happy to be able to interact a lot with a couple of people that were important with the founding of Greenpeace. So this is Bill Darnell, and he came and talked about the founding of Greenpeace, which was, of course, inspired by the 1958 sailing of the Golden Rule. Also in this picture is Bob Stowe. His parents were two of the four people that had the whole idea to get Greenpeace started. He hosted me in his home one night, and his home is basically like a temple to his parents in Greenpeace. So it was really cool to see all the memorabilia that he has up on his walls. And then our close friend, Janine Solinsky, was with us on this particular sail adventure. And another friend of ours who's a Quaker and a supporter and likes to crew on the Golden Rule from Port Townsend. Then eventually we came back around. We did Boats by Bangor, which is the Bangor Trident nuclear submarine base. And we had kayaktivists, and we had a motorboat out there. And in the background, you can see the nuclear submarine base. So this is just part of their facilities. In the upper right corner of that picture, you see the people that were on shore also protesting. So it was a well-coordinated event, very wonderful to be there. And from there, we went to Indian Island, it's called, and it's one of the places where they have a munitions terminal. And we went and protested against that. That's the USS Nimitz. And what we heard from people that we were interacting with was that it has taken arms to Israel. So we had another boat accompanying us for that particular time. And then as we did in 2016, we were part of the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. And you can see, even though the Golden Rule is pretty big, we were among a lot of really beautiful tall ships when we did the sail by on the Sunday of that festival. And we had a lot of us there that day, so it was really great. A lot of crew and shore support were there. Me and Gerry and Michelle and Zoe, as well as the crew that took us south. When we got to the Columbia River and into Willamette River and went to Portland, this is the Golden Rule entering the waters near Portland, and we were greeted by the kayaktivists there. This is the Mosquito Fleet there, and they put up their no nuke sign for us. And then we went and participated in the Vancouver, Washington Peace and Justice Fair. There's Michelle aboard with Mike Hasty's head. Sorry, I didn't have a better picture of him. And there's Michelle and I with our skipper, Steve, and Dan Shea and Gerry. So we took some veterans out sailing that day from Portland. And then one last stop, Gerry did a selfie for us in Rainier, Oregon. All of the people here were sailing on the boat, except for Beth, who's right next to Gerry. So that was a really wonderful small town stop. So that's the what did we do on our vacation this year? We've got great plans for what we're doing in Humboldt Bay this year. Michelle is going to be giving a presentation at 7:00 Pacific time, and she's got even more information about what we're actually doing. But we're going to continue to offer presentations and boat visits and chances to sail in Humboldt Bay. We'll be trying to interact with the Sea Scouts, and we've got a fog race we can participate in on Saturdays, and on Sundays there's eco tour of Humboldt Bay we can participate in. Looks like we might be able to get a licensed captain that can take people out sailing where we can actually charge as a fundraiser. And Leroy Zerlang, whose boatyard was used, will help us with reservations for that process when the time comes. I'm saying goodbye to my little sister who's borrowing my car to go to town, so from the campground here. Other plans, I'm going to be giving a talk I'm going to table at a Rotary Peace Conference in Santa Rosa. We'll be having events in Humboldt Bay for Nuclear Victims Remembrance Day, and this particular PowerPoint presentation will probably be used for this report back to the Humboldt Bay community about our Pacific Northwest visit. We're trying to work with people to get a Which Way the Wind festival. Those started in 2016 or 17, and the first one, there was an art exhibit and a poetry slam and panel presentation and all kinds of events for a whole week. And because of all of that, they ended up donating $15,000 to us. So that was really special. But here's the big deal. We relaunched the Golden Rule after its rebuild on June 20th, 2015. So we have a huge party that we're planning to reenact the launch, 4 p.m. on the 14th of June. And we're going to invite, of course, all the people that have been involved with the Golden Rule, both in 1958, the family members of them, and all of the people that have helped rebuild the boat, the crew, the supporters, everybody. So I'm hoping that we get a really great turnout. Leroy asked us to have this event in his boatyard. And then a few other things, sailing on the 4th of July, and of course, Hiroshima Day and webinars and things like that are kind of on our plate. We may go to San Francisco Bay this year. That's as far as we plan to go this year. We're talking about where exactly to go. We've got some stops we can make on the way down. Michelle and I are both members of the Humboldt Yacht Club. And as such, we can take the Golden Rule to all kinds of places where they have reciprocal docking privileges and use of their facilities, where we will hopefully also be able to give presentations at these yacht clubs. This is one of the major ways that we can reach beyond the choir with our message of nuclear disarmament. And I think I'll turn it over to Gerry to talk about what's going on in the world regarding our concerns about the possibility of nuclear war, and maybe give Michelle a chance to fill in anything that I have forgotten.
Thank you, Helen.
Sure. Can you see and hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Well, what a precious gift when the Golden Rule almost fell into our laps. And Freddie Champagne and two of the two VFP chapters on the north coast of California really made it happen, along with Quakers, boat lovers, and peace lovers. And I should add that, it took 5 years of volunteer effort to rebuild that. And our dear friend Chuck DeWitt, who headed up that effort and was there almost every day for 5 years, just passed away recently. So Chuck DeWitt, presente. Um, Veterans for Peace has been sailing this 34-foot vintage wooden ketch for almost 10 years. And as Helen said, our 10th anniversary will come up in June. This boat and the whole project has really inspired people. And I think a large part of the reason for that is its storied history. It's a bold act of resistance to militarism in 1958, which did inspire the Greenpeace to get its first boat. Their very first action as Greenpeace was to sail a boat up to Alaska and protest against the underground nuclear testing that was taking place there. That was in the early 70s. The fact that people put their lives on the line to sail across a little boat across the Pacific and then, face up to the U.S. Navy and the power of the U.S. government has inspired a lot of people. And this boat's also kind of a miracle because it requires so many people to make it a success over 10 years. I mean, hundreds of people have been involved in crewing, captains, organizing the events, and fundraising, and a whole lot of different involvements. And so many people have touched this project and made it possible. And then in turn, the Golden Rule has really touched a lot of people's lives. And it does put a smile on people's faces, even though we're dealing with, really difficult and sober topic of the real and growing danger of civilization ending nuclear war. No other way to put it. Prior to the emergence of the Golden Rule as a VFP national project, Veterans for Peace had a minimal and commitment to one of its key principles, and that is eliminating and eventually, reducing and eventually eliminating all nuclear weapons, I think is how it's stated in the VFP statement of purpose. Helen and I were also involved with several other people in founding the Nuclear Abolition Working Group. And that working group has become a very precious part of the Veterans of Peace. Our monthly meetings are well attended. We usually have, at least 25, well, I wouldn't say at least, but often 25 people from all around the country who are all very, very committed and knowledgeable activists and share a lot of wonderful information and strategizing. We've actually arguably opened up between the Golden Rule and the Nuclear Abolition Working Group. I'd say we've opened up a new front in the anti-nuclear movement, and one that's been highly respected. And our Veterans for Peace Nuclear Posture Review has made a big impression on a lot of people, and even several years now after it's come out. We've had a number of large successful webinars. We have as many as 300 people signing up for the webinar, getting ready for another one coming up in February. And one of the things we've done that's really important, it seems obvious, but tying the threat of nuclear war to U.S. militarism and U.S. intervention around the globe, to U.S. imperialism. And that's arguably been a short sight of some of the anti-nuclear movement, at least over the years. It's been a movement that's kind of in a niche of its own, and oftentimes does not take into account U.S. foreign policy and U.S. intervention around the globe as the driving force. It's really driving us towards nuclear war. And right now, I would say we have incredibly reckless nuclear brinksmanship. And the whole, what the Ukraine war is really about in the first place was what the U.S. wanting to put nuclear weapons on Russia's borders. So it's And now it's got to a point where it's been escalated so much that it could become a nuclear war. So, on top of that, obviously, we're facing with genocide and Veterans for Peace, and the board of directors have been very prioritized our opposition to the genocide in Gaza. And we continue to want to make that up front. It's still going on daily. If anything, it's gotten worse. And now we're hearing about rumors of a ceasefire. We'll see what actually happens with that. But with the Trump regime coming into power, it's going to be quite an interesting period. And not only are we going to be facing, the calls for war against Iran, war against China, with some of the key people around Trump being avidly for war against Iran, for war against China, including Marco Rubio, who had his hearing today for Secretary of State. So we're also going to be dealing with mass deportations and resistance to that, coalitions growing up to defend immigrants, and though that movement will face repression, we're looking fascism in the face. So it's more important than ever to build a big and militant intersectional anti-war movement. And there's a lot of good things actually happening. People are starting to target the bases. There's a campaign here in Northern California called the People's Arms Embargo, which is targeting the Travis Air Force Base, from where weapons are purportedly being shipped to Israel. We're going to be doing GI outreach as part of that. And there's other people that are targeting the weapons manufacturers. We're going to be closing down some of the gates of Travis Air Force Base, at least next Thursday, January 23rd. And I just saw on something from World Beyond War, February 23rd, they're calling for actions at multiple bases wherever. So I want to find out more about that. Veterans for Peace is actually listed as an endorser or even co-sponsor, but I haven't need to learn more about that. But that could be a good opportunity. There was the what's the tribunal that took place regarding the weapons dealers? There was a report this morning.
Merchants
Merchants
of
of death.
Merchants of
Yeah,
death.
there's another. Yeah, there's another.
Yes, and Nick is here to report on it.
Okay, that's another really good and important effort. So I think the whole idea of putting the anti-war movement on the offensive, targeting both the bases and the weapons manufacturers, has a lot of potential. In recent weeks, a number of groups and coalitions have been reaching out to Veterans for Peace, asking to meet with us. We ended up, Ellen Barfield and I attended the conference of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, and then had a subsequent meeting with some of their leaders. And today, Dan Shea and I met with some of the young leaders from the Resist US-led wars. These are groups that are thinking just like we're thinking, and they're reaching out to us and wanting to make common cause, also interested in targeting bases and weapons manufacturers nationally and internationally. In that context, the GI outreach becomes more important. Veterans for Peace has a current appeal to redress, another avenue for GIs to contact their congressman, supposedly without any negative legal consequences. About Face, Brittany DeBarros and About Face have taken the lead in recent weeks in pulling together a number of meetings of all the legal resources that exist for GIs, both the CO counseling and the discharge counseling and the GI rights lawyers. And in fact, there's going to Veterans for Peace and About Face and the Military Law Task Force are co-sponsoring a training this Sunday, particularly oriented toward recruiting new lawyers into this scene, but also for volunteer counselors. So there's a ton of good work to do. It's good work. It's necessary work, and it's important that we continue to keep the demand that the genocide in Gaza end, while exposing and resisting the plans for war against Iran, the war against China. And then the common concern about nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war, can also be a unifying factor. When we start talking about nuclear war, we should end up talking about it all. Plus, there really is a doomsday threat, and it's not being negative, defeatist, or alarmist to say so. The danger of nuclear war is very real. It's going to be interesting to see where they turn the doomsday clock to. It's supposed to happen sometime this week, I think, isn't it? Updating the doomsday clock. It's currently at 90 seconds. They don't have that many more seconds to move it, so they're going to have to be cautious. I would put it at about 30 seconds right now. So the work for Veterans for Peace is to abolish nuclear weapons and to abolish war once and for all. You got to get rid of both of them at the same time. So obviously there's a lot going on. There are people in motion around the world and here in the U.S. So a lot of them are younger activists. These groups I mentioned before, including Resist U.S.-led Wars and the Philippine Solidarity activists, they're like young. They're oftentimes based on college campuses. I went at the conference we were at with the ICHRP in Washington, D.C. There were maybe 200 to 300 people there, all really active anti-imperialist activists, and the average age was about 25, and I'm not exaggerating. So this is very encouraging. And those young people are reaching out to us and inviting us to make common cause. So I'm excited about the possibilities for the year ahead. And of course, hope comes from collective action, and that we have a lot of opportunities for that. So thank you very much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Helen and Gerry. Are there questions for either or both of them? Could you?
Yeah, I put my hand up. Did it show up on the screen?
It did, Nick. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Gerry and Ellen, I expect there has been thought given to this, but is there any thought about going into the San Diego Naval Base with the Golden Rule and trying to block the exit of any naval vessels on the grounds that ones that carry nuclear weapons, aircraft carriers, whatever?
No,
because
there aren't.
I think isn't the Pacific Fleet based in San Diego?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is, well, we're not going to be in San Diego for a while, maybe next year. Of course, we have spent a lot of time in San Diego. So far, the orientation of the Golden Rule Committee and the VFP Board of Directors is we do not put the boat and its crew in harm's way. We do not risk the confiscation of the boat. We've found ourselves to be able to have a fairly effective presence without taking arrestable actions and without giving them an excuse to seize our boat. Having said that, that could change at some point in time, but it would be through a lot of very careful discernment by the Golden Rule Committee and the VFP Board of Directors. But thanks for the idea. It's a good one.
Maybe we could rent a tugboat and pull a barge out in front of one of those ships with a huge banner on it. I mean, I'm not really joking about it. I think we're at a point where that kind of action might seem actually in some time in the future very moderate compared to what's going on right now.
Well, definitely time to step up our game in a number of ways, step by step.
Thank you, Gerry.
Thank you, Nick.
Susan, Gerry and I talked about maybe opening it up for sort of broader discussion and just putting the view on gallery view and letting it be a little more free flowing. So I'm going to do that now. So is it and then people can raise their hands for discussion.
So I covered a lot of ground. I hope I didn't tire people out, but I would just suggest for a starting point, how are you feeling about this new year? Do you embrace some of the hope and energy that I'm feeling and projecting right now? I think it's a hard time to have hope, but if you look at some of the incredible work that's going on to build a new world in many places around the world, especially led by the global South, it can give you hope. When you see young people who are very conscious and very serious about their organizing. That gives me hope. When I see Anthony Donovan there, still out there protesting outside of the so-called deterrent summit, that gives me hope. So anyway, I'd like to hear what other people are thinking and feeling, and what, not only about your optimism or your energy, but also your priorities. What do you think we should be doing this year?
Sure. Zul has his hand raised. Go ahead, Zul.
Yeah, I have more hope. I think when we encounter even more dangerous times, certainly more uncertain times than we experienced in the last year, that we can actually have greater hope because our calling is even higher. So I have a great deal of hope, as you do, Gerry. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful presentation. And I'm really looking forward to Nick's presentation because it was a brilliant tribunal this morning.
Oh yeah, I want to hear about that too. I'm sorry I missed it.
Yes.
And I just want to note that I'm wearing the tribunal shirt, and people should all go buy them to support them. Go to their website, merchantsofdeath.org. They have great t-shirts.
Thank you, Ellen. Are there any other comments or responses to Gerry's question? Did you want to say something, Anthony?
Sure. Just I am still so full of amazement what Helen and Gerry did in this loop. It was one of the most amazing amounts of work and focus and dedication that I've seen, and just cheers off to you. And you're still doing it out there, and you're to me, you're miracle workers, and how wonderful you are sailing that boat up in those waters, and it's just beautiful. So very inspiring. Can't thank you enough.
Well, we're lucky to be able to play the role that we played, but like I say, this project cannot happen at all unless there's scores and scores of people actively involved, and so that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and in terms of what's going to happen, who knows? Today they talking about a ceasefire. They're not talking. They say they signed one. That's cool. We'll see where it goes. But I'm into encouraging everyone to not give in to hate, not give in to fear, and anything that positive that happens. I don't care if it's from Trump or anybody. Anything that positive that happens against war, let's support it. Let's support it. And yeah, my big thing is whenever you hear the word enemy, let's stand up against that, because you know the lies, we know the lies. So that's where it starts. You can't build these weapons without having an enemy to point them at. So the lie is really starting there. So I'm just encouraging us all. And yeah, the youth are fantastic. The youth are definitely getting it. So I'm going to keep supporting the youth in every way possible, thanking them very much. They're very brave, a lot of them here. But yeah, this word enemy, we just got to debunk the lies, and they're not our enemies. As Doug, yeah, you went to Vietnam last year, and those vets who've gone back to Vietnam, you see very clearly this bunk about enemies. So yeah. God bless. Thank you, Gerry. Thanks for the question, and thanks for the presentation.
Thank you, Anthony. And I'll just quickly mention that I think Anthony had been after National Veterans for Peace to put our money into Amalgamated Bank. This had been going on year after year after year, and we accomplished it this year. Thank you, Anthony. We have a checking account and our CDs invested. And after Nick gives his report, I'm happy to give a report from the National Board, which I think is also very positive. And it's kind of cool to be able to talk today about things that are good, that are changing in the world, and that we need to be part of that change. Thank you, Anthony. Tara, go ahead.
Helen and Gerry, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing and the things that you've been doing for years. And I just want to say my respect and affection has grown year after year because you don't stop. And also because of the fact that you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world. And that's very, very important. And you share that with many of us in Veterans for Peace and beyond Veterans for Peace quite effectively. So I'm thanking you, Gerry and Helen. And I was also thinking myself, wouldn't it be wonderful? I don't even think this is possible because it's across the Atlantic. I'd love to see the Golden Rule sail or be in Ireland. Do you know I was going to say that,
Oh.
Gerry? I think. I mean, what a reception it would get there. And I think it's, the message, the anti-nuclear message and the message of peace would just go over really well. So that thought just came into my mind. I doubt it's possible, but
well, we'll keep it in mind.
Yeah.
At a minimum, we'll get it into the video game.
There you are. Okay. Anyway, thanks so much for everything you're doing and for this presentation, which was beautiful and very informative from both of you.
Thanks for having us. Great to be here with you all.
Thank you very much for having us again.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. And again, just to second what Tarek said, we started the meeting talking about how many years some of us have been working together, both in Veterans for Peace as well as actively with other organizations. It's extraordinary. And just to think about how the Golden Rule was endangered at one point in time. And again, Tarek came forward and did a lot of fundraising to keep the Golden Rule going. So it really does take a community of doing positive things. And I just remember thinking at that time, oh my goodness, right? How are we going to keep this going? And it did. And it was the result of people working together. So I'm sorry if I keep sounding like an advertisement for Veterans for Peace, but I think the organization is amazing, Doug, and I ask you all the time on whether or not you envision that we would be here 40 years later. We are coming up on the anniversary of the founding of Veterans for Peace. There's a place for the organization in the world, and we continue, and it's extraordinary to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Are there other questions for Helen and Gerry? Thank you. What I was thinking, bear with me as I change the agenda a bit. Nick, would you go ahead and speak about Merchants of Death and this morning's presentation? And then what I would like to do is invite everybody to the national board meeting. You should have all received an invitation and the Zoom link. It's this Saturday. It's Eastern time, 12:40. There will be some really good information and presentations and roundups of actions that have been going on through the past year. So Nick, would you talk about Merchants of Death?
Yes. Thank you, Susan. I first want to say that, as you might recall, there's a group of us who have been working to try to persuade the United Nations General Assembly to approve a treaty to ban weaponized drones, and we're very far away from doing that. But I want to say that I'm very grateful for Anthony and for Gerry Hassett joining us for a meeting that we had in October with the Palestinian mission to the UN to talk about the weaponized drone ban treaty. Our meeting was arranged on a very short notice with Minister Mansour and his staff. And we wanted to have Susan Smith from FOR, Fellowship for Reconciliation. We wanted to have a good delegation to go with us. And so Anthony and Gerry at the very last moment were so gracious, to come with us for that meeting. And we will be having other meetings too coming up. We just got together with a Palestinian who will be helping us talk with missions at from other countries at the UN. So I just want to say that Veterans for Peace was very represented at that meeting with the Palestinians, and it came at a time of great stress for them. And it was very touching that we were able to meet with them and support them as well. The Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal was started almost 3 years ago in terms of the idea or organizing how we would go about it. It was decided that rather than have a weekend meeting, a tribunal meeting, we would create 30-minute episodes that were evidence about how the United States military contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, now called RTX, and the drone maker General Atomics had participated in a variety of atrocities since 9/11 and the so-called War on Terror. And so over the last 2.5 years, we have published those episodes on Rumble. They've included interviews with Colonel Wilkerson and John Pilger, a number of other people. And finally today, we had a press conference that was attended by, at the peak, about 192 people, most of them not press. And the press conference was to announce the final verdict of the tribunal, to have commentary by 5 people who on specific aspects of the tribunal. And I'm very pleased to say that the Muslim Network TV live streamed the whole tribunal this morning. And if you want to see that, you can go on YouTube and look for Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal Final Verdicts. And we will also be posting it for Merchants of Death, but right now that is up there, and you can see what people said. And it has offered an opportunity to lift up out of the murk of these wars individuals who were CEOs of these 4 corporations who have been enablers of atrocities, including genocide. And our report did speak to all of the laws that have been violated. Marjorie Cohn, who's on the advisory board of Veterans for Peace, did a very good job of that documentation. Ann Wright, who is also from Veterans for Peace, was one of our jurors, and she spoke today from Capitol Hill, and specifically from the line waiting to go into Rubio's hearing. David Swanson spoke, and Bill Quigley very graciously talked about how lawyers in other countries are trying to bring the Merchants of Death to heel. And finally, Rania Mathuri gave a really inspired presentation, very moving. So we are going to have a podcast called Merchants of Death Radio. That's already up, and we will be putting our evidentiary episodes in audio out for people to listen to, and we will be doing interviews. And it's a way for us to keep organizing. I, and I think other people, are now free and much more determined to do blockades and other ways get into the activity, in the way of the activities, not only of these four corporations, but whatever military contractors we might have in our area. And I think that as we move into the Trump episode, I feel, as Gerry does, a lot of opportunity and hope for a variety of reasons, but I think the American public is going to be much more exposed to the full force of these corporations and the meaning of this oligarchy than they have been exposed before. And this weapons making and war making is very much at the heart of some of our serious problems. And I'll just close out by saying, when I look at the landscape of where these fires have been, the devastation of chimneys and shards of buildings and trees and grayness, it looks very much like what's happened in Gaza. And the connection, one of the connections, a big connection, is that the weapons we've been sending over there has very much contributed to global warming. And these wars are really drivers of climate destruction. And it may be much more possible as we go forward to explain these connections to people in a way that has meaning to them, that before these kind of disasters, it did not have meaning. And having criminals in charge of the government who are such blatant criminals, not just the, these genteel criminals that we have now, may be illuminating too. So thank you very much for bringing this up, Susan. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick. Are there questions? I mean, I know that Zul wants to speak, but any other questions? Okay, Zul, go ahead.
As the mouthpiece for Lockheed Martin, we take great exception to the list that Mr. Nick Martin has said at this time. We think these statements are totally lies and that you are part of the ongoing Chinese Communist Front in this country. Thank you, and that's all we have to say for now. Please contact our lawyers.
Thank you, Zul. And a reminder to everybody about Zul's last comment. If any of you watched Amy Goodman do the interview today of the GI and veteran protesters that were taken out of the hearings on Hegeth, you would have heard Tom Cotton talk about the protesters, particularly one connected to Code Pink, as being funded by the Chinese communists. A reminder to everyone that this is the era that we are entering. So what Zul just mentioned is what is going on.
He specifically named Code Pink as the Chinese Communist Front. Many of us are members of Code Pink, and certainly we are fellow travelers of Code Pink. So we are in for a hell of a time here. And Pig Segseth would not answer Tammy Duckworth's question when asked if he would follow a presidential order to shoot protesters in the leg, and very likely he would accept an offer to shoot us in the head. So thank you, Susan and Nick. Wonderful. What work you guys did and the years of work that you and Kathy and Brad and so many people put into this tribunal this morning was absolutely brilliant. If people did not hear it and did not hear Rania in particular, please, incredibly eloquent as the words of James Baldwin, who she quoted at the end of her speech. Very worth listening to.
Thank you, Zul. Any other comments on this? So let's move to new business. Oh goodness, Bob Keilback is amazing because he always reminds us at this time this year. I don't know if everybody else is interested, but it's time once again for officer elections. And Are we ready to nominate people? Tarek, are you going to run again? So we can start the nominations. I think we need to vote next month. Do we want to start? Does somebody?
I want to ask first, Susan, are you running again for president? Before I say anything, I want to know if you're running for president.
That's a lot of pressure. Sure, but I can always change my mind.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair. Because if you're running for president, I'm going to run for president.
Right.
You are such a chicken shit. He's afraid if you don't run that he might win. So that's why he'll only run if you're running. Believe me, I know. But I would like to nominate Susan Schnall for the office of president of Chapter 34, New York City. She's been, even through her recent, very, very difficult time with family health issues, she has been our amazing leader, and I would like to nominate her again.
Second.
Third.
Thank you. And Tarek, you're on the ballot for next month.
Sure.
Okay. Vice President.
Where's Gerry? There he is.
Ran away. No, he's there.
I nominate Gerry Hassett.
I second.
And I third, and I want to say on the grounds that Gerry is everywhere with the VFP flag, every demonstration that there is. I don't know how he does it, but he's out there. He's out there in the snow and the cold and the wind, and he's out there showing up for VFP, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellen. Anybody else? Okay, Secretary. Is there anyone who thinks they can do the job that Bob Kalbach has done for Bob? I've lost track of the number of years.
There's no one in all of this greater metropolitan region who could do what Bob has done.
Yeah. So you've got a first and second. Anybody else want to run for secretary? Okay, treasurer.
I'm not nominating Ellen Davidson.
I second that.
So that's okay.
And seconding Tarek's not having her run?
Oh, wait, am I nominated or not?
You're nominated.
You're nominated. Shit.
Well, I want to know how much you make in that position. I want to know.
Oh, right.
Oh, I've been skimming, baby.
No.
I've been skimming.
Right.
Not enough, Ellen. Right.
Let's double.
Anybody else interested in running and want to nominate somebody for treasurer? Okay, thank you. Well, we'll do the voting at the next meeting. I think, Tarek, you were going to announce an action. New York Stock Exchange.
That you're talking about the action in March?
Yeah.
At Wall Street?
Yes.
Well, we're waiting to see what the schedule is at the UN that day. And we found out that Friday is not a good day. We were going to do this action at Wall Street on Friday. But it's not a good day because the entire Japanese contingent will not be available on that day because they have something going on. So I'm waiting to hear back from Rachel, but it will be sometime. You can look for announcements the week of March 2nd. We will have something at Wall Street. We will have a demonstration, big demonstration, right at the stock market, the building there.
Okay.
Maybe you could explain the context and why we're doing that date and that location.
Go ahead, Ellen.
No, you. I don't know.
No, you.
Something about the nuclear nonproliferation conference of parties, all of the at the UN.
Okay, we're going to be there to oppose all the weapons and the money financing this genocide in Gaza. We're going to be opposing the nuclear industry and the threat of nuclear war and tying that together. And we may, if we're lucky, we may have one of the Habakashas, one of the survivors of Nagasaki or Hiroshima, speak at that time. And we want to tie all this in because we know that the genocide in Gaza continues and is expanding. And we know that Israel has nuclear weapons. And we know that Wall Street is making a ton of money from all of this. And the merchants of death are also making a ton of money from all of this death and destruction. So we want to tie that all together and be right in front of the stock market on that day. And it will be, the time will most likely be right at 4:30, which is when all the people come out. That's when the stock market closes. We'll have flyers, we'll have newspapers, and we'll have banners, and we'll have speakers. So that's basically it, and more information will be forthcoming. Okay. Gerry,
Right.
got a question?
Just
Gerry, want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to also mention it will be this 2025 will be 80 years since Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right.
So we need to remind people 80 years since the dropping
it's
of
true
the
because I was 5 years
old. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm sorry, Gerry, you raised your hand, and then we'll have Zul and Tom.
Yeah, as long as you're talking about March, the thing we all go to, the Sunnyside Parade is March 3rd.
Okay, so that's the day we won't do it. So March 3rd is out and March 7th is out.
Got it. Thank you.
We can advertise it at the parade, big time. Okay.
Zul.
Yeah, Tarek, I'll help you hand out flyers when we're at the Sunnyside Parade. This coming Monday, the 20th, Inauguration Day, for folks who are not going to D.C. and who can come to Washington Square Park, 1 p.m. If you can be a little early, and if you'd like to help me, I'm going to help with a security detail for Jill Stein. So 1 o'clock this Monday, the Inauguration Day, inauguration fight back in Washington Square Park in New York City.
Well,
thank you. Any questions? And I notice we have Rowan Dunlap on the agenda.
He couldn't make it tonight. He's going to come next month, but he's a performance artist from Brooklyn, and he wants to work with us on a performance piece. He's an anti-war performance art series. So he'll talk about it next month.
Oh, Bob, please put me in touch with him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send you his contact info.
Please.
Somehow I thought you would be interested.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Tarek.
I don't want to forget, but I would like to mention that we Peace and Planet News, Veterans for Peace newspaper, which is highly regarded, is open for submissions. So if you want to write something on any of these important topics, please, Alan, put my email in the chat, would you? Thank you. Email me, takalf@gmail.com. I'm the editor along with Ellen of Peace and Planet News, and we would love submissions, especially from our younger members, about their experience and their views today. Some of us.
I'm younger than you.
What? Everybody's younger than me.
Yeah.
No, Nick is not. Nick is my senior. I have a lot of respect for Nick. And Nick has been active. If everybody was as active as Nick, we'd probably have peace already.
Or we'd be in jail.
Right.
Well, at least we'd have friends there. So we'll move into regular reports. Move the money.
The first thing I want to say, and thank you, Gerry,